Section 1. The End of the World. There is a specific latitude on this planet where the rules of navigation change and the mercy of nature evaporates. 56 degrees south. Here, the map of the Americas tapers into a jagged spine of rock, plunging violent into the Southern Ocean. This is not merely a geographical point. It is a psychological threshold. To the north lies the safety of the continent. To the south, nothing but ice and the open void of Antarctica. This is Cape Horn. For centuries, this desolate promontory has been known as the sailor's graveyard. It is the only place on Earth where the winds circled the globe uninterrupted by land, building speed and ferocity until they become the legendary Screaming Sixties. Without a continent to break their momentum, these winds drive the sea into a frenzy. Waves here do not just roll, they tower. Walls of gray water, sometimes 80 feet high, march endlessly from west to east, hiding rogue giants capable of snapping a steel hull in two. Below the churning surface lies a silent testament to the Horn's price. It is estimated that over 10,000 sailors and 800 ships rest on the seabed surrounding this archipelago. They are the victims of the violent collision between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Two colossal oceans forced through a narrow choke point, known as the Drake Passage. Yet, despite the grim statistics and the howling gales, the Horn remains a siren song. It is the Mount Everest of the seas, the ultimate benchmark of seamanship. To round the Horn is to conquer the most hostile environment the ocean can conjure. But as history has proven time and again, the ocean does not offer trophies. It offers only survival or silence. The impossible convergence, it is a place of violent convergence. To the west lies the vast, deep Pacific. To the east, the turbulent Atlantic. At Cape Horn, these two titans do not meet with a handshake, but a collision. They are forced together through the Drake Passage, a narrow constriction between South America and the frozen shelf of Antarctica. Here, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the only ocean current that flows completely around the globe without hitting land, is suddenly squeezed. The result is a hydraulic nightmare. Without land masses to slow them down, the winds build momentum over thousands of miles of open water, whipping the sea into a frenzy of rogue waves and confused swells that can snap a keel in an instant. This geographical anomaly poses a haunting question that has echoed through the rigging of ships for 4 centuries. Why risk it? Why sail directly into the teeth of the gale? For the early mariners, there was no choice. The Horn was the gatekeeper of global trade, the only viable route between the empires of the West and the riches of the East. To bypass it was impossible. To challenge it was often fatal. But even today, in an era of satellite navigation and carbon fiber hulls, the Horn remains the ultimate benchmark of a sailor's mettle. The question is no longer about commerce, but about the limits of human endurance. What possesses a captain to steer a vessel into a sector of the map where the waves are known to eclipse the mass? It is a test of engineering against fluid dynamics and fragile human psychology against the unfeeling. Crushing weight of the Southern Ocean. To understand the Horn is to understand the price of ambition, the geometry of disaster. To understand the true malice of Cape Horn, one must look beneath the whitecaps, down to the architecture of the seabed itself. For thousands of miles, the Pacific swell rolls through an abyss, traveling over a floor that lies nearly 3 miles deep. In this open expanse, the energy of the ocean is long, rhythmic, and deep. But as this colossal volume of water approaches the Horn, the geography betrays it. The ocean floor rises abruptly, the submerged tail of the Andes mountain range jutting upward to meet the surface. Within a terrifyingly short distance, the depth shoots from thousands of meters to just a few hundred. This sudden shallowing acts as a massive tripwire. The kinetic energy of the deep ocean has nowhere to go but up. The long, rolling swells of the Pacific are instantly compressed, forced to slow down at the bottom while maintaining their speed at the crest. They buckle and stack, transforming into steep, towering walls of water that break with devastating force. Compounding this bathymetric violence is the atmosphere above. This is the realm of the Furious Fifties. It is the only latitude on Earth where the winds encounter no landmass to slow them down. They circle the globe in an endless loop, accelerating without friction, building what mariners call an infinite fetch. When these unbridled westerly winds collide with the shallowing bottom and often against an opposing current, the result is a chaotic, confused sea state. The waves do not merely roll, they detonate. Here, the physics of wind and rock conspire to create a verticality that defies the logic of the open ocean. The engine of the wind, while the seabed creates the trap, it is the atmosphere that springs it. To comprehend the violence of Cape Horn, one must look to the west, tracing the lines of latitude that encircle the bottom of the globe. In the northern hemisphere, wind is constantly interrupted by continents, mountains, and forests. Friction is the great moderator of storms. But here, in the southern latitudes, the planet offers no such resistance. There is a continuous band of open ocean wrapping entirely around Antarctica. This is the domain of the westerlies, winds that chase their own tails, circling the globe endlessly, gathering speed and power with every revolution. Mariners have long categorized these latitudes by their ferocity: the Roaring Forties, the Furious Fifties, and the Screaming Sixties. Without land masses to act as brakes, the air currents accelerate into a perpetual high-velocity engine. This unhindered momentum creates a phenomenon known as infinite fetch. Fetch is the distance over which wind blows across open water without obstruction. Elsewhere on Earth, fetch is measured in hundreds of miles. Approaching Cape Horn, it is effectively limitless. The waves generated here are not merely local disturbances. They are the accumulation of energy gathered over thousands of miles of acceleration. They organize into rhythmic, towering trains of swell, moving at speeds that can outpace a ship. But the final component of this chaotic formula is the water itself. Driving these waves is the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the largest ocean current on the planet, moving more water than all the world's rivers combined. It flows relentlessly eastward. When a low-pressure system creates gale-force winds blowing from the west, the wind and the current move in unison, building massive, rolling hills of water. However, when the wind shifts, or when the waves encounter a countercurrent, the physics change instantly. The wavelengths compress. The energy has nowhere to go but up. The rolling hills transform into steep, vertical walls of water, creating the steep, breaking seas that have claimed centuries of sailors. The price of passage, given the physics of the seabed and the unremitting fury of the winds, logic dictates that no ship should ever venture here. Yet for centuries, the prow of the vessel has turned stubbornly south. The motivation for entering this liquid graveyard has shifted over time, evolving from the desperate calculations of commerce to the singular obsessions of the human spirit. For the captains of the 19th century, the motivation was hard necessity. Before the engineering miracle of the Panama Canal, Cape Horn was the unavoidable gatekeeper of the global economy. It was the only door between the Atlantic and the Pacific. To reach the gold fields of California, the nitrate mines of Chile, or the grain harvest of Australia, there was no other choice. Captains drove their iron and wooden clipper ships into the teeth of the gale, fueled not by bravery, but by the tyranny of the ledger. A fast passage meant fortune. A slow-won financial ruin. They paid a staggering tax for this commerce. It is estimated that the waters surrounding the Horn are the final resting place for over 800 ships and more than 10,000 souls. It is a vast underwater necropolis built by the demands of trade. Today, the commercial imperative has vanished, yet the ships still come. The motivation has distilled into something purely psychological. For the modern sailor, rounding Cape Horn is the ultimate rite of passage, the nautical equivalent of a summit ascent. It is a pilgrimage to the edge of endurance. Those who succeed earn the right to call themselves Cape Horners, joining a grim fraternity of those who have faced the absolute indifference of nature and survived. They go now not to transport cargo, but to answer an ancient, defiant question. Can human will withstand the worst the planet can conjure? The graveyard of ambition, the history of Cape Horn cannot be written without a ledger of the dead. While the geography created the hazard, it was human urgency that turned the passage into a slaughterhouse. During the height of the clipper ship era, particularly during the California Gold Rush, The Horn became the bottleneck of global commerce. Speed was the only currency that mattered. Captains were under strict orders to drive their vessels to the breaking point, carrying maximum sail in conditions that demanded caution. This commercial pressure birthed a specific terrifying ordeal known as making westing. To sail from the Atlantic to the Pacific meant driving a ship directly into the teeth of the prevailing westerlies. It was a Sisyphean labor. A ship might battle for weeks, tacking back and forth through mountainous seas, only to find that the relentless current had pushed them backward, losing 50 miles of hard-won progress in a single night. The human cost of this stalemate was absolute. For the crews, the Horn was not merely a navigation challenge. It was a physical dismantling. Diaries from the mid-19th century describe men whose clothes did not dry for 3 weeks straight. They speak of rigging frozen so stiff it had to be beaten with clubs before it could be worked, and of fingernails tearing away as sailors clawed at icy canvas high above a pitching deck. Below decks, conditions were scarcely better. With the hatches battened down against the green water sweeping the main deck, the air grew foul and cold. Fires for cooking were often impossible to light, leaving exhausted men to survive on hardtack and cold water. Scurvy, hypothermia, and sheer exhaustion claimed as many lives as the waves themselves. The statistics are sobering, though likely incomplete. It is estimated that in the vicinity of Cape Horn, the ocean floor is littered with the wreckage of over 800 ships. More than 10,000 sailors are believed to have perished in these waters. It is a maritime graveyard unrivaled in density and tragedy. Here, the romance of the age of sail dissolves into a grim reality. The Horn was a place where the ambition of empire and the greed of trade were frequently paid for in blood. The calculus of survival. The tragedy of Cape Horn is not solely measured in tonnage lost to the deep, but in the agonizing duration of the struggle for those who remained afloat. For a square-rigged ship attempting to sail west from the Atlantic into the Pacific, the passage was not merely a journey, but a siege. Because the prevailing winds at 56 degrees south blow relentlessly from the west, a ship bound for California or Chile was forced to sail directly into the teeth of the gale. A nautical maneuver known as making westing. It was a paradox of physics and endurance. To move forward, a vessel had to tack back and forth across the wind, covering hundreds of miles of water to gain perhaps only 10 miles of actual progress. In the worst seasons, a ship could spend weeks, sometimes months, trapped in this freezing purgatory, beaten back by graybeards, massive waves that hammered the hull with the force of a battering ram. The human cost of this stalemate was profound. Crews were subjected to an environment that systematically dismantled the human will. Sailors worked 4-hour watches in soaking wet wool that never dried, climbing rigging coated in verglass, where a single slip meant a fall to the deck or a disappearance into the black water. Below decks, the air grew foul, the food rotted, and the morale disintegrated. Scurvy was not a possibility. It was a timeline. Here, the controversy of command was laid bare. On the quarterdeck, the captain faced a brutal equation: caution versus commerce. To shorten sail and ride out the storm ensured safety but destroyed profit margins. To press on, carrying heavy canvas in a hurricane, risked dismasting the ship or driving it under the waves, but it was the only way to beat the clock. This tension turned ships into floating dictatorships. Accounts from the era speak of captains driven to madness by the howling wind, holding pistols to the heads of helmsmen to prevent them from altering course, sacrificing the safety of the crew for the sake of a timely arrival in Valparaiso or San Francisco. It was a specific kind of hell-cold wet and violently loud, where the distinction between a masterful seaman and a murderer was often decided by nothing more than the arbitrary breaking of a wave. The Horn did not just break ships, it broke minds. The psychology of the abyss, beyond the mechanics of navigation and the statistics of loss, there lies a darker, more intimate history of Cape Horn, the erosion of the human mind. The physical toll of the passage was visible in the frostbitten extremities and the broken bones of the crew, but the psychological toll was a silent creeping rot. For the sailors confined to the forecastle, the Horn was not merely a geographical waypoint. It was a prison of sensory overload and sleep deprivation that could last for weeks or even months. The environment demanded a state of hypervigilance that the human body is not designed to sustain. The roar of the wind in the rigging reached decibel levels that made communication impossible, isolating each man in a solitary bubble of noise. Below decks, there was no respite. The constant violent motion of the hull meant that sleep was a physical battle to stay in a bunk, while the pervasive dampness ensured that dry clothing became a distant memory. This relentless assault stripped away the veneer of discipline. It gave rise to a phenomena often whispered about in the port cities of Valparaiso and Liverpool, a specific form of madness born of exhaustion and terror, where seasoned mariners simply ceased to function, paralyzed by the sheer scale of the ocean's malice. This human cost was exacerbated by a ruthless commercial imperative. In the boardrooms of London and New York, the Cape was a variable on a ledger, a risk calculation weighed against the price of Chilean nitrates or Californian gold. Ship owners, insulated by distance and insurance policies, placed immense pressure on captains to drive their vessels to the breaking point. A quick passage meant a bonus. A delay meant ruin. This economic equation transformed captains into tyrants, forcing crews aloft to reef frozen canvas in hurricane-force winds, knowing that a slip meant death in waters too cold for a swimmer to draw a second breath. The controversy of the Horn, therefore, is not just found in the recklessness of the route, but in the expendability of the labor used to conquer it. The ships were often overinsured, making them worth more at the bottom of the Drake Passage than in the harbor, while the crews were recruited from the dregs of waterfront taverns, often coerced or shanghaied aboard. To the maritime industry of the 19th century, the suffering endured at 56 degrees south was accepted as the unavoidable overhead of global trade. The Horn did not just break ships. It broke men, leaving those who survived the passage haunted by a profound understanding of their own insignificance against the indifference of the natural world. The modern arena, the opening of the Panama Canal in 1914, slashed the throat of the Cape Horn trade route. Almost overnight, the desperate armadas of square riggers vanished and silence fell over the Drake Passage. For decades, the waters were left to the albatross and the occasional naval patrol, the commercial imperative to risk death having been rendered obsolete by engineering. But the human fascination with the extreme does not require a profit margin to survive. Today, Cape Horn has transformed from a highway of necessity into an arena of choice. It is the Everest of the seas, the ultimate benchmark for the modern professional sailor. Yet the dynamic has shifted dramatically. Where the captains of the 19th century sought only to survive the passage, the modern racer seeks to conquer it at breakneck speeds. The vessels that now approach 56 degrees south are not lumbering structures of oak and canvas, but precision instruments of carbon fiber and Kevlar, designed to fly above the waves on hydrofoils rather than plow through them. They are guided by satellite uplinks, routing software, and shoreside meteorological teams that predict wind shifts with mathematical precision. But this technological armor provides a dangerous illusion of immunity. While the ships have changed, the ocean has not. The kinetic energy of a 40-foot wave remains absolute. In fact, the speed of modern sailing has introduced a new category of violence. A collision with a semi-submerged shipping container or a growler of ice at 30 knots results in catastrophic disintegration. The modern solo sailor, cocooned in a high-tech cockpit, is arguably more isolated than the clipper crews of old. If disaster strikes here, in the point of inaccessibility, rescue is days, sometimes weeks away. The helicopter range does not extend this far. Furthermore, the environment itself is becoming more volatile. Climate models suggest that the Southern Ocean is absorbing the brunt of global heat, energizing the cyclone systems that rotate around Antarctica. The winds are accelerating and the waves are growing steeper. The modern sailor faces a paradox. They possess the greatest technology in maritime history, yet they are subjecting it to an ocean that is becoming increasingly hostile. The Horn remains indifferent to the hull material. It demands the same price for an era today as it did in 1850. The eternal sentinel today, Cape Horn sits at the intersection of heritage and a volatile future. While the commercial lanes have shifted north to the calm mechanics of the Panama Canal, the Horn has not been tamed. It has merely changed its constituency. It remains the ultimate benchmark for the sailor, a place where the protective veneer of modern technology is stripped away by the raw physics of the planet. We cloak ourselves in carbon fiber and guide our paths with satellite precision, believing we have mastered the globe. Yet, in the screaming latitudes of 56 South, these advancements offer only a fragile advantage. A rogue wave rising 80 feet from the pitch black does not register the sophistication of the hull it crushes. The ocean here does not bargain with radar. It overwhelms it. The danger is not receding. It is evolving. As the global climate shifts, the thermodynamic engine of the Southern Ocean is spinning with renewed violence. Oceanographers have observed that the Antarctic circumpolar current is accelerating, and the band of westerly winds is contracting and intensifying. The storms are becoming more frequent, the swells more chaotic. The ice, once locked in the Antarctic shelf, calves with greater regularity, sending silent, megaton hazards drifting north into the shipping lanes. The challenge of the Horn is not a relic of the 19th century. It is a developing threat profile for the 21st. On the windswept promontory of Horn Island, a steel sculpture stands against a gale. It is the silhouette of an albatross, cut with voids that sing when the wind blows through them, a memorial to the thousands of souls who vanish beneath the gray rollers. Legend holds that these birds carry the spirits of lost sailors, eternally circling the site of their final struggle. To look upon Cape Horn is to look upon the indifference of nature. It is a jagged reminder that there are still places on this earth where human will is secondary to the elements. It stands as the grim gatekeeper between the oceans, the end of the world, and the beginning of the ultimate test. As long as the winds blow and the currents collide, the Horn will remain, waiting for those brave enough or foolish enough to challenge the abyss.